Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Byington, and in this Dante video, we are going to be talking about Canto 14. Canto 14 takes us into the seventh circle. It's not initially the first time we've gone into the seventh circle. This is the third ring of the seventh circle. So if you recall in the other Dante videos, I talk about how there are nine circles of hell, but some of them have different divisions. So the seventh circle of hell involves those who have been violent, and the violence is divided into three divisions. The first is violence against one's neighbor. So the opposite of love thy neighbor. So this might include some murder, among other things. So in the second, it's violence against oneself. And in the first couple of lines, actually, of Canto 14, it even mentions something about Dante exiting the wood of suicides. So those who harm themselves, who unalive themselves, they comprise the forest of suicides in that second ring of the seventh circle. So in the third ring of the seventh circle, which is where we are in Canto 14, these are people who have been violent against God, nature, and art. And I'm going to explain what those three things mean as we go along. So, the landscape we are in now is that of a burning sand, and it's raining chunks of fire for all eternity. And in this burning, hot, scorching sand, where it's raining flames all day long, the three groups of sinners have to position themselves, I guess that's the best way to say it, on this terrain in different ways. So those who were blasphemers, those who were violent against God, they must lay stretched out upon the sand for all eternity. So those who are wandering around aimlessly or in circles, like they never get to where they're trying to go, that it's impossible for them to get from point A to B. Those are people who are violent against nature. And the most texts refer to these people as sodomites. And I know you look at that word and you think, okay, this was just like people who did sodomy. Now, this is like it gets weirder than that. This would be things like bestiality or like really weird sex stuff like P. Diddy or Jeffrey Epstein. Then the last one I think is one that students sometimes have trouble understanding. So you've got some others who are like kind of crouching or squatting for all eternity on this burning hot sand. And those are the people who are usurers, and they are described as being violent against art. So what that means is that, so if we're talking about a literal usurer, these are people who, in our world of capitalism, they wouldn't have had it quite like this in Dante's time in 1300. But the way it is today, you see how corporations often really take advantage of people, and sometimes banks do this, and that often comes in, say, the form of jacking up interest rates or making things cost a price that is really unnecessary, and it's just to line someone else's pockets while you struggle against paying it off the rest of your life. So this whole violence against art in the sense of usurers, it was considered sinful to charge interest on a loan. You should only be requesting the money back that the loan amount was for and not interest. So kind of like you see now, you have people saying like, well, I've been paying all my student loans for 10 years and paid tens of thousands of dollars into it, but the amount is still very high because over those many years, they've only been paying the interest off on it. So you see that's what that's talking about. In another sense, when it says it's violence against art, let's say you hear your favorite song come on, or you see your favorite movie, and there's this particular scene, just that it sends goosebumps all over your skin, right? That's aesthetic rapture when you have that moment of experiencing, let's go with your favorite song. So, art doesn't charge you to experience aesthetic rapture. And so I guess Ticketmaster would basically be going to hell in the circle too. So just to help you kind of understand in modern terms, what why is violence against art here? And if you have seen some of my other videos, there were other times that this comes up. In Sir Philip Sidney's Sonnet 1 from Astrophil and Stella, there's a reference about nature being God's child. In this time, and Sir Philip Sidney's writing like a couple hundred years even after this. So let's say like Middle Ages to the early modern period, art was considered like a quote unquote child of God. Like any kind of ideas and not restricted to visual art or music or whatever, ideas that can benefit society are considered like a gift from God. And so to have violence against art, that's talking about things like that too. Okay, so we have a couple of conversations about things like there are more sodomites than other sinners in this particular circle, and then we go into the other major thing about this canto and why I assign this particular one is this is where we get some explanation, more details about the topography of Dante's hell. And he tells us about a river, and we kind of discover because Virgil explains to us where this comes from. So we have when he's explaining where it's called a rill and like Rill in many translations. When we're talking about that, Virgil says it comes from the island of Crete, where in a mountain, if you think of um, old mythology of Rhea hiding her children from her husband, because in mythology, the legend is that he was going to devour each of them so they couldn't live because a prophecy said that one of them would murder him and become king of all the gods. So, in that same mountain, Mount Ida, we have what's called the ancient old man who lives in the mountain. It's not like a real human man. It's much stranger than that. So he lives in this mountain inside of it, and he's made of metals. So it starts out by saying that his head is made of gold, and then his chest and his arms are made of silver. Then down the rest of his torso is made of brass. And then the rest, then going on below that, below the belt line, below the groin, depending on how you want to interpret that. He's made of iron, except that his right foot is made of terracotta. So you see the progression of how we start out with gold, silver, brass, iron, and then something very breakable, terracotta. Um, this is usually interpreted as a metaphor for the degeneration of humankind across history. Like we really haven't gotten any better. We try to be, let's say, like even out in the 21st century, we try to be a more diverse and welcoming society, but that seems to also cause a whiplash of other entities that want to tackle those ideas even harder. So we have that description of the old man, and there's also a description before the all the metals and then the terracotta, the foot made of terracotta, that he is looking away from Egypt and looking toward Rome. And so, because you have Rome being mentioned, this is inserted because of Dante's political agendas again. And also, if you think of he's looking away from Egypt and looking toward Rome, you're looking away from another well known major ancient empire, the Egyptians, and looking towards the Romans. the city of Rome, or well, the Holy Roman Empire in this case, and kind of watching its downfall the way that Egypt experienced a decline. So something about where uh, something else about the man in the mountain, and this is how we get our bodies of water, is that besides the gold and the silver, the brass, and the iron, there are fissures in his body parts, and this is where his tears, he is infinitely crying for the degeneration of humankind. And all these tears that exude from his body flow down the mountain, and they go on to form the rivers that I've talked about in other videos. The Acheron, where we were crossing in Canto 3. And we also have another river you've surely heard of, River Styx. And all of these are described, so going from this manifestation of the degeneration of humankind, all flowing down from those rivers in hell to all going down into the very, very bottom of hell where Satan resides, and that is Cositus. So that is all for Canto 14 and its description of the topography of Dante's hell. Be sure to watch my final video on Canto 34, where we really actually explore that final layer, the frozen lake of Cositus. Thank you for watching.